Welcome to All Pro Football Data. My name is Jim Coburn, and today's episode we're going to be talking about Marvin Harrison Jr., wide receiver out of Ohio State. We are going to be looking at how he profiles based on his data. He is also the son of Hall of Fame wide receiver Marvin Harrison, formerly of the Indianapolis Colts, and we all know how great Marvin Harrison was. So, what does this man look like? Well, to find out, you have to look at offensive market share scores. Offensive market share scores, for those that are new to the channel, new to the work that I do, you take a raw statistic gathered from a school website or college football reference. You take that raw statistic and transform it into a market share score by taking an individual statistic and dividing it by the team total. This transformed statistic is ranked against positional peers to get a percentile score, and that score is weighted against the age score of a prospect to give you the offensive market share score. Some people call it a dominator rating. I'm not on the same wavelength as them because I divide up the individual statistics evenly, so you can see the receiving production and the total offensive market share production and the touchdown production. I'm not combining all the numbers into one number. I'm breaking them up to kind of give you an idea of what they were like stylistically as a player based on their statistics. And taking a look at Marvin Harrison Jr. based on his statistics, he had an 85 percentile in terms of his receiving market share production score, 91 percentile in terms of his total offensive market share production score, which takes into account his receiving yardage, rushing yardage against his team's total yardage. And then, of course, his touchdown market share score, which is probably his best score, was in the 95 percentile. This data set also is out of 3,710 wide receivers since the 1969 NFL draft class. Taking a look at all those numbers, we also have to look at his efficiency scores. So efficiency scores are how efficient was he with the football in his hands. You take raw statistics again from school website or college football reference. You rank them against positional peers, and that score is weighted against the age score of a prospect. Touchdown percentage is the number of touches divided by total touchdowns. And then all that stuff becomes offensive efficiency scores. How did he test in terms of these scores? Pretty well. In terms of Marvin Harrison Jr., he tested really well, efficient in terms of efficiency. His yards per reception score was easily in the 80 plus percentile, and his TD percentage, which is how often he got the ball did it lead to a touchdown, was in the 90 plus percentile compared to 3,710 wide receiver performances since the 1969 NFL draft class. Pretty decent, I would say, in terms of those metrics. And of course, when you look at the Pro Bowl average, the All-Pro average, the All-Pro threshold, the starter areas, he definitely tested well in terms of those particular areas. Moving on to adjusted production scores. Adjusted production means I'm taking those production scores and I'm adding context to them, because context is key. The age of a prospect is scored from youngest to oldest on the day they were drafted. Then the age score is used to add to offensive market share scores, strength of schedule scores, SRS, which is the strength of team score. Those scores are then ranked to give you the MSA, or market share, strength of schedule, strength of team, and age score. And then the PASS score, PASS score, adds those market share scores with the efficiency scores, with the age, with the strength of team, and with the strength of schedule score. The PASS score is essentially like a gumbo metric. You take all of the production scores, throw them in a pot, and gives you a number. And why this is important is because it gives you context to the numbers. How productive were they for their age? How productive were they for the team that they played on? How productive were they for the level of competition that they faced? And in terms of Marvin Harrison Jr., in terms of those particular numbers, fantastic. 90 plus percentile in terms of his age score, 90 plus percentile in terms of his MSA score, and 90 plus percentile, actually 99 percentile in terms of his PASS score, which is all the production scores added together. And like I said before, this is out of 3,710 individual wide receiver performances since the 1969 NFL draft class. Easily hits all the marks of All-Pro, Pro Bowl starter potential, of course. Moving on to comparisons. In terms of comparisons for Marvin Harrison Jr., these are wide receivers that had similar production marks individually in my particular data set. This does not mean that Marvin Harrison is going to be a bust just because there's busts with him in the data set, but it just kind of gives you an idea of the types of wide receivers who scored similar to him in terms of the draft process. So we have guys like Devontae Adams, Corrin Robinson, who was a pretty high up there pick who kind of busted a little bit in the NFL due to some character reasons. Robert Woods as well. You have Marquise Wilson, who was kind of a later round pick. Chad Jackson. Patriot fans know Chad Jackson. And then, of course, you have Rydell Anthony and DeAndre Hopkins. Not a bad list to be on, to be honest. And this is just the nature of the position. Wide receiver is one of those positions where it's very hard. There's a higher bust potential with wide receivers, running backs, and quarterbacks compared to other positions in the NFL. And that's just, it is what it is in terms of the position. So you kind of have to take those L's a little bit. Even though a guy may test really well productively in terms of their production, they may not really translate at the NFL level. And that's just how wide receiver's always been, even though wide receiver is getting a little bit easier to play in the NFL nowadays. But I digress. In terms of a conclusion with him, Marvin Harrison Jr. outlook. He profiles as an All-Pro to Pro Bowl wide receiver based on his overall production profile. The weakest link in his data is the receiving market share not being in the 90-plus percentile. However, he should still be considered a top 5 wide receiver in this draft class based on his overall data profile. That's Marvin Harrison Jr. in a nutshell. My final thoughts on him are this. Whether you have him number 1 or number 2 in this particular draft class, he definitely is one of the better guys in terms of production in this particular draft class. Now, do I think he's going to be the greatest of all time? I don't think he really tested like that from a statistical standpoint. I could be wrong, but he didn't really put 90-plus percentile scores in every single metric that he had. He wasn't like a Calvin Johnson. He did not put up the numbers that even Marvin Harrison put up. Malik Nabers actually has more in common with Marvin Harrison than Marvin Harrison Jr. in some ways. But I still think he's a good prospect. And I think he should deserve to go in the top 5, especially if he tests well as an athlete. So with all this stuff out of the way, thank you guys so much for watching my channel. Of course, my name is Jim Coburn. You can follow me on Twitter at Jimetrics, at JIMETRICS. You can also check me out on patreon.com/jcoburn, JCOBERN. If you want to know more information about those data things, go to that channel, especially become a patron. It really helps out the show a lot when you become a patron. And make sure to like this if you liked it. Like it, share it, subscribe. Just do it. Just do it, man. I'm going to be doing a lot of videos like this going forward, and I appreciate the support from all you guys. Peace!